Hey everyone, this is Chief Sean. This is not going to be your normal scouting guide for the draft. This is going to be focused on the Chiefs. I'm rocking my Rashid Rice jersey. Called a big year for him last year before the year even started, as soon as we drafted him, actually. Um, I love watching the wide receiver play. It's one of my favorite positions to scout. And so I thought I'd shoot a scouting video for you guys. Hopefully you find it interesting. Hopefully it's insightful. Who knows? But I'll have fun making it. This is an incredible year for wide receivers. We have 9 guys that actually tested at the combine that ran a sub 4.440. That's pretty incredible at the wide receiver position. A lot of great skill guys too there. So I've narrowed it down to 20 prospects that could actually come to the Chiefs. I'm not going to focus on Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze or Marvin Harrison Jr. We're not going to get them. They're way too high in the draft, and if we did ever trade up that high, we're going to take a tackle. So sit back. Hopefully, you can get some good information from this. I'm going to roll through them pretty quickly, but I'm going to go through roughly 20 candidates, pick my top 5 candidates that I think would just be excellent fits in KC's system, and then I'm going to give you a few prospects that I think the Chiefs should probably avoid, and I'll give my explanations as to why that is. So I hope you guys enjoy. So obviously, there's no way to know what Veach is thinking as far as wide receivers in the draft. He always kind of surprises Chiefs Kingdom, and we'll see if this year's any different. If you were to trade up in the draft, that's where you're looking at that first guy, Brian Thomas Jr. He's definitely going to be the first one off the board out of those 4 first round selections that are on that line. He ran a 4.3340. He's absolutely electric. He's 6'4", has a good vertical. He can. I mean, his burst after the catch is incredible. There's just not much to knock on Brian Thomas's game, especially considering he's playing behind Malik Neighbors. Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. Looking at both of them going into the combine, I was definitely pro Xavier Worthy actually. Adonai Mitchell actually is who gained more ground with me. I knew Xavier Worthy was going to run a very fast 40. He's a speedy guy, had decent numbers. They actually were slightly better than Adonai across their collegiate careers. But Adonai's measurables, what you kind of want to see from as far as the ability to take some hits. If you're going to go across the middle, but also have that speed, he ran a pretty good 40. So that's definitely not something to sneeze at. At his size, he came in at 205 pounds, and he still ran a 4.3440. So that's impressive. He's about 6'2", so somebody definitely keep an eye on for the Chiefs. I could definitely see that being a pick we would make. Xavier, 4.2140. I'll talk a little bit more about him in a later slide, but that's obviously going to get his draft stock moved up. I don't know if the Chiefs would trade up for him. I do think he doesn't get enough credit for his intelligence, understanding of reading, because he is so fast. I think people just think you're a one-trick pony. I even made the comment that he's John Ross 2.0 as soon as he ran that 40. That's not entirely true. He does have pretty good ball tracking. He's had a few drops, throughout the year. But he is definitely not John Ross 2.0. He's had a pretty solid career throughout all of college. So for the last 3 years, he's put up some good numbers, better than a fair amount of these other prospects. Lad McConkey, coming out of Georgia, had a solid college career. His route running is truly what sets him apart from other prospects. He can hit in the short, intermediate, and deep ball. Very crisp coming out of his route, and he can shake defenders very well. Reminds me a lot of like a Hunter Renfrow. I didn't see the production I'd like to see if you're going to be taking a first round pick. He didn't have a particularly awesome year any year of his collegiate career, so that's a knock I would personally have on him. You watch his film, you're going to see some very good route running though, good hands. Going to the second round, Troy Franklin he's a speed guy out of Oregon. His longest touchdown, 84 yards. I love seeing that I really like seeing the guys that have those long bombs. That they have at least once during the year they were able to take it to the house. Um, a lot of people have him mocked to the Chiefs, and I think it's a good pick if they were able to get him, especially if they could get him in the second round. Originally, he was projecting to be a first round pick, but I think how everything's shaking out now, it's looking more like he'll drop to the second. Um, he has obviously good speed, but what I liked most is that he can accelerate after the catch. He does much better than a lot of these speed guys, and then he also has plus hands. So he would fill the need with what we're looking for. Xavier Legette is similar to Brian Thomas. He has 1 year of really good production. He was outstanding last year. He's comped to be like DK Metcalf. He ran a 4.39 40. He came in at 227 pounds. He's a physical specimen, is what he is. Devontae Walker, he's been comped to the Chiefs a number of times. The only person I've maybe seen comped more than him, maybe two guys, would be Xavier Worthy and Ladd McConkey. Devontae Walker, he's a great deep threat. I'd like to see more of his route tree. I don't know if he's going to just be a guy that kind of has that speed and then kind of disappears once they get into the NFL, because everybody knows what you're going to do, and that's kind of how I watched him. You watch his tape, he has some good plays. He was not the most impressive of the speed guys to me. Keon Coleman, I feel like he played a lot. He's a great athlete, 6'4". He can run a lot of different routes. His routes could use some improvement, but his hands are absolutely, despite having some drops, he has some excellent hands. It feels like every catch you're watching in his highlight film is like Odell Beckham Jr. He had a lot of hand catches, so you like to see that. He is an athlete. He's not quite as polished as you'd like to get. Some people had him in the first round projected. I think he's dropped a bit more because he ran a 4.61 40 at the combine. And then speaking of Odell catches, Ricky Pearsall from Florida, he has a fair amount of those himself. He has some just highlight reel circus catches, and those are impressive. He has great route running, good hands. There's no knocking on any of that. I am curious of how he'll be able to handle the physicality at the NFL level. I think he could be a potential boom or bust if he's taken really early, particularly if he's going to be pressed to get out there and play right away, which is what the Chiefs need. I'm afraid he won't do as well. Roman Wilson, he's an intriguing prospect in just that he had a pretty solid year. Nothing too great from a number standpoint, but he's also in a pass-second offense, which is not as common in the college game today. But coming from Jim Harbaugh's Michigan-style play, they're a good run team. He does have some speed, 4.39. He runs a good 40, and he fights through contact really well. He doesn't have that after-the-catch burst that I really want to see. That's my knock on him. His longest catch of the year was 47 yards, which is one of the lowest numbers. I'm looking at my sheet, the lowest number of every prospect I looked at. So I would like to see, his ability to actually break one, and that's what we're kind of looking for. You see Malachi Corley over on the side. There's a reason he's just a picture, and he doesn't have the same style as everybody else. He didn't go to the combine, and he plays out of Western Kentucky, and that has a lot of question marks associated with it. He is amazing out of the screen game. And my comp for him, I've seen comps of Deebo Samuel for him, actually. Another awesome receiver, too. I can't remember who else it was he's been comped to. What I love about him is he kind of reminds me of Isaiah Pacheco, but at wide receiver. Just imagine that. He actually can play, he has a good short intermediate game. He can break some plays. He'll take it to the house, too. So there's definitely no sleeping on him. Could he be a gadget guy? Could he be Deebo Samuel? That's what we don't know. He's an intriguing prospect and one that I could definitely see the Chiefs being interested in. Go watch his film if you haven't. It's just fun to watch. But he's got that dog in him. So enjoy. Javon Baker, he's someone I really thought was gonna test out a lot better in the combine, but it didn't work out that way. He actually ran a, he ran a 4.5440, which I really thought he could hit in the 4.3s. He actually, I mean, he had an 86-yard touchdown on the season, and I was a fan of his tape. Tons of yards off of limited receptions, good change of direction, and if you watch the film, one of my favorite things about him was that you could tell he was the security blanket for his quarterback. Sometimes the quarterback kind of just blindly threw it in whatever direction he was in, and he was able to make the catch. So that kind of thing showed out on the film for me. Jalen Polk, he's the number 2, obviously, at Washington. He had a 92-yard touchdown, which I obviously like seeing, who had the longest. And I think out of everybody, he technically had the longest touchdown. It was kind of a broken play touchdown, but hey, he'll take it. You just run that seam or run down the sideline and hit perfectly stride for stride, and it worked. Don't know if he's a product of the system. I mean, they throw the ball around a lot down in Washington. He had pretty good hands and awareness. He could be a bit of a late round steal, so somebody to keep an eye on. If the Chiefs aren't able to get one in the first couple of rounds, maybe we go tackle. And then Brendan Rice, obviously you probably know him mostly as Jerry Rice's son. Whether it's fair or not fair, I think people can pump him up and get a little more excited about him. He started off his career in Colorado. Then he moved over to USC. He has some return ability. His film wasn't too particularly impressive. He runs solid routes, has decent hands. He doesn't get the separation I would like to see, especially if I'm using a third-round pick. I would never use a third-round pick on Brendan Rice. Let me say it like that. There are people that are projecting him to go to the Chiefs at third round in their mock drafts. I really hope that's not the case. This is such a stacked wide receiver class that there's no reason we should be drafting somebody potentially on name recognition. You watch the film, and there's no way he is, that high on this draft. But who knows? You don't want to be the guy that passes up on Jerry Rice's son, I suppose. Going into the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds, Luke McCaffrey, speaking of, famous relatives, obviously the brother of Christian McCaffrey and son of Ed McCaffrey. Ed McCaffrey was a great receiver for the Broncos. As a Chiefs fan, I know that makes some of you guys want to throw up. That's fine. Ed played a little bit of everywhere, but Luke actually surprised me. He did pretty good in the combine, better than I thought he would do. I had some decent height. He's pretty... To me, he seems like a good straight line runner, but not too dynamic of a receiver. He ran a 4.47 which was better than I thought he would do. I personally don't. I hope the Chiefs don't go for him, but I think a lot of people are interested in him at least. He's coming out of Rice. Malik Washington out of Virginia. I'll talk about him a little bit more here in a little bit, but he had a tremendous year out of Virginia, which not much can be said about Virginia from last year, so kudos to him for that. He's 5'8". He did hit the 7th highest vertical jump in combine history. So, I mean, he's 5'8", but if you can jump 42.5 inches, that's a pretty damn good jump. So, that's somebody you could keep an eye out for. When I was looking at this and just reviewing it strictly from a Chiefs perspective, I actually didn't see him as a Chief guy. You might hear 5'8" and think, oh, that's a guy, he's speedy, right? He ran a 4.47 which is honestly better than I thought he was going to come out and do. But that's impressive, and he's a worker. He fights for every last yard he can, and that's what I will love to see. If the Chiefs took him in a 4th, 5th, or 6th, I'll pop a beer open for him. I love watching his film. He's all around everything you'd want to see from a wide receiver. I think he gets slept on and hated on a bit much because of his 5'8". Anthony Gould, speed guy out of Oregon State. I mean, not too bad. Shifty route running, good hands, instincts. I'd like to see more separation from him if he's really going to be a good receiver at NFL level. Isaiah Williams, former quarterback, converted to wide receiver. He's good at finding holes in the defense. Obviously, we like that. We know that from Kelsey and Rice, but that doesn't translate too well for the Chiefs. I don't see us using late-round picks to select Isaiah Williams. A talented guy, though. Let's see if I had any other notes. definitely doesn't move the needle for 2024 for the Chiefs. So maybe if he was like a UDFA, we maybe would take a look at him. But as it is right now, I don't think we would draft him. So my number 5 prospect that I would love the Chiefs to select would be Malachi Corley. I wish I could put this dude higher, but there's so many dogs in this class. But Malachi Corley, if you go watch his tape, it's just entertaining to watch. It's just good football. The way he fights, I don't care that he's at Western Kentucky. That's not going to mean anything. That dog is going to come to the NFL, and he will fight for those yards. Some people think he could be a boom or bust. I think he's going to do well if he gets in the right system. If that's the Chiefs, I don't think we'll regret it. I want us to select an X. That's why he's not higher on my list than 5th. But Malachi Corley, we like our screen game. Andy Reid's always been a screen game guy. He's good for that. We got Hollywood already this year. This is a guy who could come in and make an impact in our wide receiving crew right away. He will be ready. So I do like that about Malachi Corley. I don't care about the lack of competition, so to speak, that's going to make him drop in this draft. Adonai Mitchell, there's not a lot to knock on with him. He had a great year last year. Not quite as much as Xavier Worthy had, but he has a lot of when you just look at him, you're like, that's what a receiver should look like. It's not Randy Moss height, he's just solid, thick, runs really fast, 4.34. You like that. He had a 1.16 drop rate. That is incredible. Deep catches, nothing too impressive there. 94th in deep yards. He's not blowing the socks off there. That's where you're going to be looking more at Xavier Worthy. But Adonai Mitchell definitely checks a lot of the boxes that the Chiefs would like. And you got him and Rashee Rice for, 3-4 years together. That's a fun combo. So I wouldn't mind seeing that at all. Not my top Texas prospect, but, I am impressed with him, and I would love to see the Chiefs select him. So that brings us to Xavier Worthy, which, if you looked at the numbers previously from Adonai, 981 yards in 2021. If this is John Ross, how come he's getting 981 yards then? And if you look at his targets, they went up every year. His yards set a personal best last year. 22nd in screen yards in the country. Obviously, that plays well into the Chiefs' scheme. Pretty good yards after the catch for a guy his size. Drops a little higher than you'd like to see. He's 4'2", 140. God, that's going to get people excited. I personally would love to see him play. I'd love to see Pat being able to throw him the ball. You got Hollywood on one side, him on the other. How the heck can you cover Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce then? All right, now it's Xavier Legette. I might spend a little bit more than a minute on this man. I researched everything I possibly could. I was on South Carolina message boards. I watched his film. Man, this guy is fun. I would love for the Chiefs to draft Xavier Legette. Of the people we could, or without having to do trading to get, Xavier Legette is definitely, he's at the top of that list. He has 1 year production. Look at that. You can see nothing to and what I've learned from at least looking at the South Carolina message boards, trying to figure out what exactly happened, is that basically they have a strict food chain. This person's the number one. They're not losing it unless they, they get they move on. They move out of college. His chance was this last year, and man, he had no drop-offs from the big plays. You watch him; he has that burst. He is huge. He's DK comped, and honestly, Steve Smith said he might be better than DK already right now, as is. The dude is incredible. He ran a 4.39 40. He checks every box possible. He's not my number one receiver in this draft outside of the top 3, but he's definitely number 2. I'd love to see him make it to the Chiefs. Only 2% drop rate, which is really impressive for a guy who really only broke out in this last year. Pretty great on the deep catches. His film will jump out at you. 227 pounds, 6'2", 6'3", 4.39 40. Yes, please. All right, now we're to my man, Brian Thomas Jr. I know some people will hate on this, but watching his tape, his tape excites me more than any wide receiver in this draft class, and I'm talking about those top three. I understand it could be a flash in the pan. I don't know. This man had 17 touchdowns leading the NCAA this year. He ran a 4.33 40. He is 6'4". The thing you love to see if you watch his film, he catches the ball, and then you see the cameras, like the defenders are disappearing in the camera when he's running away with the ball. He had multiple 80-plus yard touchdown catches this year. Second in deep yards, 670 yards in the country. Third in deep catches. Drops, not ideal, but this is an X. His tape, if you watch his highlight reel, it's impressive, and he did it against some top talent there in the SEC. I personally, I didn't even want to review his tape. I knew how good Malik Neighbors was, and I'm like, I don't care about this guy. I did not watch enough LSU. When I watch his tape, I immediately fell in love. This guy would be an absolute stud and could play day one for the Chiefs. He may not be able to play every position at the Chiefs, but you put him opposite of Hollywood, and we need some height. 6'4", he's every bit of 6'4", and he's a very good athlete too. So his dad was spent 12 years in the NFL, 35 sacks I think in his career at linebacker. So this guy's a stud. He absolutely just jumps out, and he checks every box of what the Chiefs would want. So if we were going to get him, we're going to have to trade up to get him. I don't necessarily know if I see that happening, but if it happens, I'll be cheersing to that. So now let's cover some not so good things. Hopefully y'all are still with me. I'm going to go through some of the prospects that I would a little concerned about the Chiefs going after. You probably picked up on it in some of my previous comments, and then I'll go with a little more coverage after this slide. There's five prospects I just would rather us just avoid taking and go with things that we know we can get some lift out of. First one, Keon Coleman. I didn't talk too much about the Chiefs taking him, but I'm a little lukewarm on him. I will say this. He had a bad combine. He might drop to a great value. A lot of people are very excited about him. He has great hands, and thanks to his bad 40 time, which I think probably will improve at his pro day, I think he's kind of an in-betweener for me. I did not want us to draft him before that. Now he seems like he could be a decent value selection if he drops much further. After him, Brendan Rice. I just don't want his name chasing. Like I said it before, if you watch his film and you didn't know his name, I don't think we'd be talking about him in the third round. That's just my personal take. His punt returns, he can punt return, but I'm not looking to draft Montrell Washington in the third round. That's, that might be a little harsh, but that's the reality of what I see. Some people probably doubted Jerry and they regretted it. I just don't see Jerry when I watch him play. Next, Devontae Walker. Again, I don't like his route tree. You watch his film, he makes some plays, but you watch Xavier Legette, Brian Thomas Jr., Xavier Worthy even, Troy Franklin. They're all burners that can do better things than what I see out of Devontae Walker. So, to me, it's more my gut with him. Maybe that's fair, maybe that's not fair, but I just hope the Chiefs don't get him. Next is Roman Wilson. I like that he's a bit of a dog at the end of a play, but you know who he reminds me of? Another guy out of a Michigan school. He reminds me of Sky Moore. I don't think anybody in Chiefs Kingdom is looking to get another Sky Moore. He's got some speed. He catches the ball really well. Very physical at the point of tackle, getting as many yards as he can. But I don't see somebody that's going to be what we need for the Chiefs, especially for this upcoming year, or potentially for the long term. And then finally, Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey has had a very pedestrian career, playing for one of the best programs in college football, arguably one of the best programs in college football history. I'm going to go to the next slide and I'll talk about this, but it won't. You'll see what I'm saying, because I'm going to have Lad McConkey compared to another much later pick in the draft, and if you didn't know the names, I don't know that you would choose who you choose. But Lad McConkey, yeah, it really worries me every time I see him and he's getting mocked a lot to the Chiefs. He just hasn't had the output that you'd like to see, and I assumed, he must have had injuries. He's had a couple, like 2, and nothing long term, but he has no huge stats across his career. So we'll take a closer look as I compare him to my Puka Nacua of this year's NFL draft. And this year's Puka Nacua is Malik Washington. And when you compare him, if you just didn't know, you took away the Lad McConkey and the Malik Washington, and you just looked at what their production's been and what they accomplished over the years, I don't think anybody would be taking Lad McConkey. Yes, he can run some amazing routes, but what are you doing with it? I want to know why he disappears so much. Why did he finish 4th on his team in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns? And that might be generous on the receiving touchdowns portion, because he only had 2. Obviously, Brock Bowers led the team, missing a good chunk of the season. He only had a couple injuries throughout his career, so it wasn't injuries that derailed him over those seasons. He has if you look at him, just kind of reminds me a little bit of a, like the tall quarterback that has a cannon arm, but can't read defenses, can't play. That's kind of the feel I get from him. He comes from a blue chip, school, and so therefore people just get really excited about him. I don't see it. Tape-wise, he does run good routes. Production-wise, I see nothing. There's nothing that is exciting about that. I look at Malik Washington, and I see them overlooking him because he's 5 foot 8 inches tall. He had 1,426 yards receiving. He led the country in receptions. Now, what you might not realize, he played for Virginia. Virginia finished 3-9 last year. And that dude fought for every single yard, every single play. If you watch his film, I'm not saying you're going to get the same level of excitement that I get out of watching Brian Thomas Jr., but I will say you're going to see a guy that had no quit. Obviously 110 catches for a team that did nothing and was going nowhere. That's not some pushover league either. ACC had some dogs. Florida State went undefeated. Clemson's in that. It's not like it used to be. He set he's 7th best vertical time or jump in combine history. He also had some great measurables elsewhere with the 4.4740. They're talking about this dude at 132nd pick. How is one guy at 30 and the other guy at 132, and one guy has done nothing in his career, but he played for a great team, and the other guy did a whole bunch with nobody else around him? That is asinine, and I think somebody's going to get a steal of the draft with Malik Washington if he drops to the 4th or 5th round. So that is my breakdown. I don't necessarily think that Malik Washington will end up a Chief. He does think he can come out and contribute to a team immediately. If we were to get him in the 5th or 6th round, Beach, I salute you. I'd love it.